Well, hello everyone. I've already got a 4 thumbs up, and I'm barely even starting. That is so wonderful. I've got a lot going on here in Oakland. Are you hearing me well? Everything happening over here? I just finished my practice on the Maya Mountain channel. We do a group practice on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So I popped over here, and so glad to be here. Where were we? Okay, for the last many weeks, I've been going through Dudjom Rinpoche's miraculous life story, one like inch at a time, because I originally thought, oh, maybe I'll do 2 weeks on Dudjom Rinpoche's life, and then I found it so conducive to my own practice to bear in mind, I don't know how to put it. The practice we've been doing of merging our minds with Dudjom Rinpoche. Kind of having him, we did this a little bit, of having him dissolve and dissolve into us, or us dissolve and dissolve into him. Merging this Dudjom Rinpoche with our minds. It's really benefited my practice. Now let's look and see if I'm on the right channel. I sure hope so. I definitely clicked the right channel, but whether it happened or not, I don't know. I hope so, because I'm not seeing anybody there right now, but I got 4 likes, so that's a good sign. They already like the concept. So today we're going to be talking about his 20s, when he'd become, very well respected. Everybody had faith in him, even at a very young age. So, like the current Dudjom Yangtze Chang'e Pema Shepa, he inspired a lot of confidence in people. And he already had students, like older people, older lamas who had become his students of a young 20-something-year-old, which is really amazing. And you recall that one of the miraculous features of his life was that when he was 5 years old, he was playing. Actually, when he was 5 years old, he started. Yeah, he met with some. I think that was when he was. Let me look at it again. Yeah, I think it was 5 years old, wasn't it? Somebody can remind me. When he met with some girls that played with him and gave him yellow scrolls, like Terma scrolls. We talked about that some. And this Kondotuktik story tends to, although it wasn't revealed at that time, it tends to harken back to that actually encountering Dakinis. It's implied that he actually was encountering Dakinis at the time. So the story kind of begins there. And then at 13, Guru Rinpoche, he had vision, apparently, where they'll say Guru Rinpoche and Yeshe Tsogyal actually came to him. So that he had an experience like they're coming to him, I think, in the flesh and blood, that kind of experience, which I don't ever have. I wouldn't know about. But I've heard about this kind of experience. Just to call out for a moment to Kunzang Dechen Lingpa, who was a 20th and into the 21st century treasure revealer, who I actually met. He said he actually had this figure person come up to his gate, was dressed really strangely for the area. I won't go into all the details of it, and then that person started telling him all sorts of things about his life that nobody could possibly have known except for himself. And he found out that was kind of a guise of Guru Rinpoche. So Guru Rinpoche appeared in many different forms to different people according to their capacities and according to what activity he was engaged in. So I don't know how he appeared to Dudjom Rinpoche when he was 13, But at that time he was given a list of what the treasures were he was going to discover. And later he said, oh, actually Rinpoche told him. I just heard this from Lama Sonam, Tsering Rinpoche. That Rinpoche said you could either discover all these treasures or you could spend your life caring for the treasures that have already been discovered. Now, treasures here refers mainly to texts, practice texts, explanations, histories, this kind of thing that previous treasure revealers had discovered. And after a while, he said, there's so many hopes and fears that come up around this, and it's really a lot of trouble. It's not easy. It's really difficult to bring new treasures into reality, and so he burnt the scrolls. Maybe he got the scrolls at that time. Anyway, he burnt the scrolls all up. He burned all his yeah, he'd written down a lot, terma. He'd translated them and written them down. So you got a few little seed syllables in Dayak or Dakini script on a yellow scroll for an earth treasure, and then you the whole thing blossoms in the mind of the person's destined to be received by. That's the world we're in right now when we just talk about Dudjom Rinpoche. So yeah, he had written down and sort of translated these scrolls that he got earlier in life, and then he just decided to give up, more or less, discovering treasures himself and really take responsibility, as we've discussed, with all these transmissions he'd been given. Which is a darn good thing, because it turned out he was one of the 2 people who had the physical library of texts and also all the transmissions from thousands of texts. And he ended up spending a lot of his life repairing those texts, making them, putting practice manuals with them, fixing scribal errors, having them reprinted and so forth, and going when they were driven out of Tibet. Sometimes he'd have a single text, and it would be the last edition of a book or a whole encyclopedia of books that contained very important Dharma teachings that would have been completely lost if it weren't for him. So everyone is very grateful and was very incredibly grateful to Dudjom Rinpoche and Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, who did a similar function. So as far as he knew at that time, that was that. He was setting aside his own treasures and prioritizing these other treasures, which translated into, can you see behind me? See that big? You can, right next to my head on this side. It's all reversed to my vision. You see that big pile of pecha texts? These look like, I don't know, piles of checkbooks or something with a kata over them, a white scarf. That is the Dudjom Sumbum, or Dudjom Rinpoche's collected works. And Kurt Kutzer, thank you very much. If you ever happen to see this, he gave that to me just the other day. I haven't wrapped them or anything yet, but there they are. They're very accessible that way. Isn't that amazing? So most of those are other Tertan's treasures. So remember that Dudjom Rinpoche told him that he would be Guru Rinpoche's regent, sort of his point person in that current time, that 20th century time. So he was taking charge of all of Guru Rinpoche's activities in a certain way. Certainly the texts, he was very much a scholar and writer, beautiful writer. So there we are. So it comes to age 25, and there was this yogi. Let's see if I can find. Yes, there it is. So let's see. Let's look at a picture of Dudjom Rinpoche. This will be relevant, but let's put her aside for just now. This will be very relevant. That was Dudjom Rinpoche. Let's look here at a man named, oh, tiny, Tulshik, destroyer of illusion, Tulshik Dorje. And you may have heard of Tulshik Rinpoche, who was a monk, great holder of the Nyingma monastic tradition, if you're a Dharma history lover. Not, he wasn't history very long ago, he just passed away a few years ago. This is not the same Tulshik. This is Tulshik Dorje, who's a student of Dudjom Rinpoche's and a yogi, a non-monastic practitioner. And there's an actual picture of him. So this man came to see Dudjom Rinpoche. And he said, you have to, right now, I know you have a treasure of the Dakini, the feminine principle, and you have to write it down right now, the whole thing. And Dudjom Rinpoche, demurred because he's humble and said, well, just because this, I was hearing this yakety yak, this kind of noise in my ear or somebody, Tulshik Rinpoche, Tulshik Lama, bugging me about this, so just to satisfy him, I did this. In that moment, the whole thing, the whole Khandro Tuktik cycle blossomed in his head, in his mind. So as a gong tear, gong means how enlightened intent is one of the translations. Gong is a complex term to translate, and I'm not a translator, but the discussion that goes on around translating this term centers on the idea that gong is the mind of a gongpa, I think. It's the mind of a Buddha's mind, an awakened mind, an enlightened mind, not our ordinary mind of a regular unawakened person. So gong tear is a mind treasure, but a Buddha mind, an enlightened mind treasure. Okay, so the whole thing blossomed in his mind. He wrote this long thing out, long text out. And Khandro means Dakini, or can be literally a female practitioner, awakened practitioner, or in general, the feminine principle of non-dual wisdom. Either way. So Dakini is another complex term. It's hard to translate, but I think you've probably heard it before, right? Have you heard the word Dakini before? If so, put a comment in the comment box. Let me know. So tuk means heart, tik means like essence, like drop, like juice. So it would be translated as heart essence of Dakinis, heart essence of the Dakinis. And there's other ways you could, there's other, David Sharp, I know you've heard of this. So there's other ways you could, the Khandro Nyingtig, for example, the Dakini is also Dakini Heart Essence, Nyingma's heart. So there you go. So the whole thing blossomed, and he wrote it down. And Tulshik Rinpoche, that interesting man, quite wonderful apparently, ran off. I don't know how far. It seemed like he did it right away. So Dudjom Rinpoche must have been in central Tibet at the time, which makes sense, this time frame. And he went to the Yarlung Valley. Here is a contemporary picture. And in the lower part of the Yarlung Valley, there's a cave called Crystal Cave, Yarlung Crystal Cave. There's another crystal cave. There's probably many, but it makes sense. But there's definitely one in eastern Tibet. This is the one in central Tibet. And Yarlung, as you know even better than I am sure, David, is the sort of center of the poetic way in which we regard ourselves as practitioners in the Nyingma tradition. What do I mean by that? I mean that Yarlung was a center of a very important dynasty, Tibetan dynasty, that very valley. And Guru Rinpoche arrived there. Trisong Detsen, the king at the time, the Guru of Guru Rinpoche's arrival, became a major sponsor for all of his activities. And that whole world became like a metaphor for us as practitioners in the Nyingma tradition. Our Lama is Guru Rinpoche. His wife is Yeshe Sogyal. We're all the 25 disciples of Guru Rinpoche, sitting around him or her. Guru Rinpoche could be a her. Maybe they'd invoke a different metaphor for that. And the practices that were brought in then are very, very important. So this practices of 8 herukas, or 8 wrathful deities, Vajkalaya, Hayagriva, Yangdak, and so on, are central practices. And Guru Rinpoche and Yeshe Sogyal themselves have become stand-ins for the principle of, in Guru Rinpoche's case, you know, the guru, or the Yab, the male deity, is the embodiment of technique or skillful means and compassion. So the sort of archetype is of this great male teacher, usually, that is able to use all kinds of infinite number of techniques to help the practitioner, and is completely awakened, of course. And then the archetype of the female practitioner, or the Yum, embodied by Yeshe Sogyal, the perfect student, and the who had an indelible memory, but also embodying the principle of wisdom and emptiness. Where'd that sentence begin and where is it going? Anyway, so all this whole world becomes like our world when we step into Nyingma Vajrayana Sangha. And also the Guru Rinpoche is the principle inside of us, the wisdom principle, our own inner knowingness. So let's look at a picture of, here's Lama Pema Dorje Rinpoche's, my lamas. I had several great lamas. Oopsie, went away. This is Lama Pema Dorje Rinpoche's painting of Yeshe Sogyal as a deity that you practice. So what do you mean deity as you practice? Well, when we're doing the one stage of practice, we are visualizing ourselves as Yeshe Sogyal, and that way coming to embody all of her practices, all of her qualities. So that's we can say more as the weeks go on, but I have a topic I want to get to today. We'll talk more about Yeshe Sogyal and this cycle. You can see these mysterious ladies down here, and we'll talk about that in the future. But this was the visual. That's the self-visualization for Yeshe Sogyal. But Dudjom Rinpoche then, so that's what Chulshik Rinpoche was accomplishing. I don't know if he was called Rinpoche in those days. And he had miraculous signs, and it was just amazing. He came back and reported that it was incredible for him. So then Dudjom Rinpoche built a whole, this was called cycle of teachings practices and teachings around that. There was what's called a root text. So what he originally wrote down that time when Chulsha Rinpoche came to him, it wasn't only this practice of self-visualizing as a deity, it was every stage of practice, step by little step, from beginning with preliminary practices all the way up to the highest level of Dzogchen practice and everything in between. And the flavor of this cycle is simple. So the texts are totally beautiful and yet very easy. They have all the most profound meanings, and yet they're not very wordy. And that's not true of all of the treasures that Rinpoche discovered. So, in fact, he had actually farmed out some of the writing. So we're going to go back to that picture. That's Dudjom Rinpoche, who recently passed into parinirvana in the last few years, with Dudjom Rinpoche and sitting next to him. And Dudjom Rinpoche gave Dudjom Rinpoche, he was actually Terma regent, the holder of the lineage between between this life and the following life as Dudjom Sangye Pema Shepa, and as was Tinley Norbu Rinpoche. But in this particular case, the Khandro Tuktik, he asked Dudjom Rinpoche to, based on the root text, or this little, what he'd written down at the moment, that Chulsha Rinpoche asked him to write something down, to expand upon that and make a whole Ngundro, or preliminary practice out of it. So the Khandro Tuktik Ngundro was actually penned by Dudjom Rinpoche. And that wasn't the only example in the cycle. There were other people, yogic exercises. He asked somebody, Kunzang Dorje, to formulate. And he brought in a text from a Bun teacher for some of the Ana Yoga cycle. And believe it or not, and something not talked about very much. So he was shaping this whole, for intellectuals have a university, and yogis and yoginis and practitioners like us, if we want to go in depth, we have what are called cycles that you work your way through, step by step oftentimes, or your Lama may say, just pull out this part's the most important part for you. Okay, so what we're going to do today is look at wow, it's only been 9 minutes. That's amazing. Oh no, it says 23 minutes. My clock says something funny there. Okay, I'm not understanding. I'm a little bit out of step here. Not understanding the time. Maybe I started early? Is that possible? Oh well, it's all so confusing. But today I want to talk about, well, first I want to mention that I live in Oakland, California, and today is the 1st of June, 2020. And I had a rough night's sleep last night. And I'm lucky enough to be able to say that's all the trouble I have. But right now it's a very hard time in the United States if you're at all tuned in, if you're sensitive, and so forth. And last night, for example, the helicopters were flying, police helicopters were flying over my house, and it turns out now I know that a drugstore near my house was being ransacked. And everything else that's going on. So we're all stirred up, unless we're totally in retreat and just practicing and not paying attention to anything on the outside. So these practices, the most common practice that Americans love these days are practices that calm you down, right? They reduce your stress. So there's a huge movement of mindfulness meditation, and which is another word for, or a variety of, shamatha, calmness or peacefulness meditation, tranquility meditation. And Dudjom Rinpoche, into the Khandro Tuktik cycle, wrote a text about how to practice this, do this practice within the context of a Nyingma treasure text style practice. So what's the most common form of shamatha practice in the United States right now, or in Europe? It's focusing on the breath, one way or another, however your meditation instructor guides you. It's not in here. I think last week or the week before, we watched Dudjom Rinpoche give a teaching in London on video where he went through 3 styles of shamatha meditation, and again, none of them were focusing on the breath. So let's go through it. I think it might be interesting, especially if you haven't done shamatha in a Vajrayana context, David. So it's hard to find in a Vajrayana context, isn't it? Sometimes in the Nyingma tradition, in the Kyabje tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, they start with a lot of shamatha, shamatha and vipassana, and then they move into Mahamudra. But in the Nyingma tradition, oftentimes shamatha is, very good. Shamatha is moved through very fast because there's concerns about kind of overdoing it with the shamatha and getting stuck there, and really it's not a route to enlightenment unto itself. But it is what we need, and times like this we need it more than ever. So and yet it's what so many people need more of. That's right, David. As a meditation teacher, you know this. And yet, as you know also, in this cycle of Kandratuktik, it comes in right before Trekchen, or Dzogchen, which is interesting, after everything else. After Nindra, after development stage, after the completion stage and all that Salon and the unmentionable topic in the Ana Yoga section. Then it comes to this, shamatha, and then he actually goes on to vipassana, which is really, I came in out of some other training in shamatha vipassana from the Kyabje Center when I came into Tibetan Buddhism, and I wondered where the vipassana went. And there's different ways. There's a lot of different teachers, such as Jigme Lingpa, since we're here, David, you and I. He seemed to put shamatha as the beginning stage of Dzogchen that we're familiar with, and vipassana as that other part. So he would use those names for the 2 main stages of practices in Dzogchen. But here, Dudjom Rinpoche is not doing it that way. So let's, I thought it'd be good, we don't, right now, only David is here with me. But a lot of you guys are watching this after the fact this week. So if you get a chance, I know it's tempting to just go in and go for whatever the part is you want to know and then run off in this hectic environment. But I recommend actually doing this practice along with what I'm going to do a little slideshow with the steps of shamatha practice according to Dudjom Rinpoche, and really from my heart, the bigger the hurry you're in and the less time you think you have to practice, the more important it is to practice. That's the old saying, in paraphrasing. Right, David? We know this. So let me see here. Okay, we're going to jump right into Dudjom Rinpoche's instructions for shamatha, or cultivating tranquility. Okay, somehow the mic got muted. Okay, you lost it when this particular slide went up, or before the whole thing? Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. Well, David, you know 7-point posture very well, and so, however, other people are watching at the end. Okay, just this one. Thank you, David. I wonder how that happened. So, anyway, we've been talking about 7-point posture. The legs are crossed, and if you can do this Gyalje Kilchung posture or the Vajra posture with the fancy legs, you can. That's wonderful. It's very stable. It's very. You can sit very mountain-like, and then if you can't, you sit cross-legged on the floor. A thin cushion is good underneath your butt, not a fat hockey puck like they put in most Dharma centers, known as a zafu from the Japanese tradition. I don't know what they do with it, but they don't work very well for us in general, for humans. Then these hands, the left hand is on top of the right and resting in the lap or on your knees. And the upward tradition is kind of not done generally in Buddhist traditions. We have our hands down. And then the shoulders are like an eagle's wings. Bringing my notes back up again. And the tongue is in the roof of the mouth. The eyes are gazing down beyond the nose, not at the tip of the nose. And that's a subduing, relaxing kind of eye gaze. Yeah, it's a spread like a vulture's wings or an eagle's wings with the shoulders. Okay, and if you can't do it in a cross-legged posture, sit in a chair. So we pull ourselves up, and it's a little bit taut, and according to Dudjom Rinpoche's instruction. And that, especially for beginners, is helpful in getting the mind to settle down. Then let your breath settle naturally. There's nothing like being told to breathe naturally than make you breathe unnaturally. I know this as a former nurse practitioner. Just say, I remember so many experiences in an area where people practice yoga and stuff, where you'd say, as a nurse, listening to someone's lungs or their heart, you'd say, take a breath or breathe naturally or whatever, and people would go into this prolonged yogic breathing thing, and you really, then you're stuck there for like 5-10 minutes while they breathe. It's very, it's one of those moments that you can't complain about because the person is so sweetly doing their breathing practice with you. But you need to get out, you have 15 minutes with the person. So anyway, remember that, people. Don't do special breathing with your nurse practitioner. Here, you're just breathing like you usually do. Then sever all mental fabrications. Translators like big words because by using a variety of words, they can be more technically correct. But mental fabrications means don't make up stuff. Don't make up a story about stuff. Don't keep building on whatever thought occurs to you. Don't build it up and make it into something. And don't disturb the mind. Don't stir up your mind. Allow the mind to settle without creating anything. That's a repeat of the same idea of fabricating anything. Don't do that. Of course you will do that, but without distraction. You know, of course, you will build up things, and you will be distracted. And Dudjom Rinpoche wrote things in the pure form. So it's okay. Don't hate. Also, he said elsewhere, and it's good advice. Don't scold yourself about when you do create something in your mind. You get distracted and so forth. Don't say, "Oh, bad me. I'm just the most. I'll never be able to meditate." Blah 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 blah. That's another story, right? Just drop it and go back to meditating. So if you can settle like that, it's fine. That's enough. So that's kind of a high level of mindfulness practice or shamatha, without relying on a particular object. And then, however, that's a little hard for us in our culture, especially when we're learning how to meditate. So we like a step-by-step approach that uses sort of mental props or reminders. So he said, if not, meditate on a deity of any size you like, such as Vajra Chotingsa, and this guy in front. So this is Soki Tuktik actually, but it's kind of like that. So Guru Rinpoche, this is a form of Guru Rinpoche in his guise of he had to go to the Cannibal Island and tame extremely rough people, or whatever. I don't know if they're people or not. Cannibals. And he was like naked and had had ornaments that 3 eyes and very graceful. This is a Sambhogakaya appearance. And he's in union with Mandarava. It's a long life deity, but it's very similar to what Vajra Chotingsa would look like. Chotingsa means skull garlanded adept. So he has 51 skulls around his neck, and that's a call out to Abhidharma, or Buddhist philosophy. And they break down very precisely in this higher level Mahayana studies about all the different things that your mind can go off on. Feelings, identifying all the different kinds of emotions you can have, all the kinds of thoughts, all the kind of mental phenomena you could have. It sounds a very interesting thing to study. I think I might do that sometime, but not when there's riots on my street. They're not on my street, in my town. Right now, we just need to chill, right? So you could use Buddha, if whatever is most familiar to you, that you can draw up and place in the sky in front of you means in the space in front of you. All right? And so we're using that as an object of focus. Let it arise vividly without straining or focusing too hard. So it's a rare person in our culture who will actually there are people, painters for example, oftentimes, so they've used a lot of their visual imagination. Or someone who's has practiced deity practices where there's a frontal visualization like this before. Suddenly you can just say, okay, Buddha in front. But for most of us, it's kind of blurry, and it doesn't arise really easily. So don't strain at it and focus or do this anything weird with your eyes, where you think you have to really focus on this thing. Just relax and let whatever comes up with this. So we Americans, we try too hard. We have to work at our meditation. And that's been a problem for me. So relax and chill. I have 3 people here now. I'm sorry if I started early. I got a message from my calendar telling me I was supposed to start. So I'll blame my cal. This is what we don't do as Dharma practitioners, is blame outside forces. We always take responsibility ourselves. So I'm giving a bad example. All right, so don't strain at it. Just let that visualization of Buddha or Guru Rinpoche or Tara, whatever you love the most and you know the most, come up in your mind in front, and look at it gently. Yeah, gaze openly, directly at the vivid appearance of the deity's form and relax without fabricating and without distraction. That's how Dudjom Rinpoche might look if you were relaxing without distraction. Thus settle in natural repose. Okay, so we've gone through 2 systems of 3 that we're going to do of how to practice shamatha. Tranquility meditation according to Dudjom Rinpoche Jigdal Yeshe Dorje. The first was what? Practicing for kind of almost formless shamatha practice. And the second was using an object in front of us. Visualized. The thing about deities is that they're translucent, so don't get too solid about it. So there's one extreme is where most of us are, as we just see a big blob there. Just accept the blob. And then, for now, and maybe it'll grow over time, maybe it won't. Just be okay with that. And then the other extreme is that everybody's like a painterly person may get really into making it solid, and then absorbed into that absorption, and it's not what it's about. Okay, so then we've done 2 systems, and what's the final system? Well, I think you all have been with me for a while, you know. If settling in this way is still difficult, place a material object in front of you. Focus on it, gazing openly at it without moving your eyes or blinking. Or blinking is added in there. So I used a little berry, picture of a berry I found on the street or on a sidewalk here as my object for this picture. That you can use whatever is in front of you. Oh gosh, I was going to be going through and actually doing this with you guys, so we'll do this after. We'll do it afterwards. And you focus on it and you gaze without blinking. I have allergies right now. Do the best you can do. If you're using this downward gaze, you can have your eyes not fully wide open and not closed, but kind of hooded and looking down. And that helps with the blinking suppression. Okay. Then don't let your mind make any distinctions at all, such as good or bad. So don't evaluate that object mentally while you're looking at it. Not thinking and not meditating on anything at all, completely release and settle. And that's it. Those are the 3 systems of shamatha. And let's do them. Fortunately, with this slideshow business, I would have to go all the way back to the beginning in order to use the slides as a support right now. So we're just going to talk through it. And I'm going to release the slideshow. There's my desktop. Let's go to camera, EOS, and then open it up. Nope, that didn't work. We're seeing my desktop successfully. Ah. I know, I'm sorry for the delay there, friends. Just trying to figure out how to I guess I'm going to make a new scene. Ah, yes. Hi. So, let's meditate. So first, we're going to meditate briefly in the style of Just resting. So we get into the 7-point posture, and the key point is to sever all those fabrications we've been talking about thinking about the past, the present, the future. Don't disturb the mind with any activity at all, like thinking, I did this in the past, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to do this in the future. This is going to be great. Just focus on not even what's happening, don't even think about what's happening now or not happening. Just be, without creating any distraction, and let the mind settle. That's it. That's the first practice. So let's see if we can do that without any props. So that's the first system. The second one is using a deity in front. It can be in front and low. If you're trying to calm your mind, that kind of makes sense. And let me get some reminders here about whatever size you want. Allow it to arise vividly without straining or focusing too much. Gaze openly, directly at the vivid appearance of the deity's form and relax without fabricating and without distraction. Thus settle in natural repose. All right. So now, what if that doesn't work? Tell me, did that not work? Were you not able to settle down? Did it feel uncomfortable? If so, we have the final system here, the Hail Mary move, as they'd say in football or something. Putting a material object in front of you and gazing at it openly, not moving your eyes or blinking. Don't evaluate it. Just stop thinking. Just put all your will, all your, what do we say, attention into this object. I have one out there. And that's it. And don't blink. It's okay if you blink, but keep it to a minimum. The idea is to be very, very still. And then after you've done that, completely release everything and settle. All right, so which of those styles work best for you? We've got 4 people here now. If you tried it, do you like having a more open and less object-oriented style of shamatha or calming practice? Or do you like having a visualized deity or whatever it is you visualize? Or do you prefer using an object, bringing your mind back to it again and again? How does that work for you? So while you're thinking about that, you like to start with a point, a material one or an immaterial one, David? You start with a point and draw back into space. Did you invent that yourself? I've known people who did. Material. Okay. Okay. A dot on the wall. There you go. Well, whatever works for us is what the best one is. Oh, Jeff, you're here. Isn't that sweet? These, my beautiful Facebook friends, very senior student. Jeff Deering's here. And you prefer this first, but you also like the second. It probably, for me, I'd say it depends on where I'm at. What's going on for me, how agitated I am. If I'm really super agitated, which unfortunately I have a combination of training and privilege to not have, except for the nights like last night when there were police helicopters flying overhead and people looting stores near me. I'm pretty mellow these days from my training, but also I have this relatively protected life. I'm just very, very lucky. Very lucky. So people may find if their situation is rougher, and there's just all sorts of things happening at once in there that's personally touching them, family crises and so forth, that I would think the sort of using an object would be really helpful as a tool, a physical object. And then you can, like David said, and what works for him is then you can draw back into space, is the way he put it. I'd say, just relax into space, maybe not have to be looking so hard. All right, well, it's nice to have some old internet friends here. And I want to just add, as we're talking about Khondro Tuktik, since you're here. So Dudjom Rinpoche wrote this long root text, fairly lengthy, and then he, over the years, in various places that he stayed, he elaborated on different sections. In particular, it was according to people's requests. So I'm going to go ahead and say that, Khondro Tuktik is the outer practice of the series, and it's actually the most developed one in the cycle. And then inner is Kurokule. Secret is Sangdongma, Lion Face Dakini, and innermost secret is trauma. But they already had a big trauma cycle that Dudjom Rinpoche discovered. And so I think nobody asked him. There was some idea that he was working on that in the very end of his life, fleshing out these Dakini practices. But there's just a little bit of root text there, and you can make a practice out of it for trauma in the Khondro Tuktik cycle. There's a little tiny chit practice. And also, there are more developed Sangdongma and Kurokule practices. You can also, in the master sadhana of Ishisogo, you can plug in these other Dakinis instead. But also in the same volume, which is very cutely put in volume Ma. They sort of number the volumes according to the letters of the Tibetan alphabet, and they put all these Dakini practices of Khanda Tuktik in volume Ma, and Ma in their language too. Ma in our language, right? In their language too, it's a feminine ending or feminine meaning. So, the name of my nonprofit is Ma Yum Mountain Ma, and it's mom, mother, consort, kind of like that. And then which means an esteemed mother usually, and then Khandro Ma, female, Khandro Dakini, like that. And then, at the same time, it was revealed, the Soki Tuktik was revealed, the Loppon Vajra, which is Guru Rinpoche within his aspect as a long life deity in union with Madhurava. And its volume Ma is like really thick, and then the part about the Daka is really, really brief. It wasn't developed as much. So the Loppon Vajra practice that we do, they're doing at Pema Osling right now as the envelope for some other practices they're doing is on the Vajrayana Foundation. They're doing a summer retreat, and right now they're in retreat on this practice, Soki Tuktik, and then that's the secret practice. So the outer practice is Orgyen Menla, Guru Rinpoche's Medicine Buddha. The inner practice is, probably a lot of you know this already, your ringers. Khandro Norla, the wealth deity practice. And then the secret practice is Soki Tuktik, Loppon Vajra. The innermost secret, they usually for a fib a little bit and say it's Dorje Drolo, but that's actually in a whole other volume, was discovered at a different time. There's innermost secret, very tiny little page-long practice with Guru Rinpoche, Wrathful Guru Rinpoche, and Hayagriva and Vajrakalaya together, I think, in one. Dorje Pema Kill. Oh, I can't quite remember it. Maybe you can, the name of it. And then, of course, Dudjom Rinpoche discovered a whole treasure trove. But the elaboration of that came later in his life, and we'll come back to that. So, thank you so much for joining me today, especially my old friends who know all this stuff already. So sweet of you to come. And, oh gosh, we should use if I was on the ball, I'd have the dedication of merit from Khanda Tuktik. By this merit may all obtain omniscience, may defeat the enemy wrongdoing from the stormy ways of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara may we free all beings. Good night, all.